The Shamoon virus that attacked Saudi Arabia's Aramco was probably the most destructive attack the business sector has seen to date. A similar attack days later struck Qatar's natural gas firm, Ras Gas. U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta alerts New York business leaders on what he described as a sophisticated virus.
What if your nation's most important systems, the backbone of its economy and security, were wiped out overnight, not by bombs or invasions, but by a silent, invisible force? This nightmare became a reality in August 2012 for Saudi Aramco, the world's largest oil producer. A single cyber attack, later known as Shamoon, turned 30,000 computers into lifeless shells, disrupting operations and sending shockwaves through global markets. Saudi Aramco, you may not have heard of them before, and neither did I until I started researching this story, and that's because they don't sell to consumers. Instead, they sell to manufacturers and distributors. So what do? Saudi Aramco is one of the largest oil and natural gas producers in the world. It controls massive amounts of oil reserves. Saudi Aramco may be the most profitable company in existence, producing 25% of the global oil supply. It's not a publicly traded company, so we really don't know how much it's worth. Because Saudi Aramco is huge and operates globally, it has a lot of computers. There are pump stations, plants, shipping terminals, logistics centers, laboratories, research and development centers, and storage facilities. Let's not forget the teams it takes to run it. There's an HR department, IT department, marketing, truck drivers, mechanics, engineers, public relations, finance, drilling teams, and advisors. Add all that up and Saudi Aramco has over 50,000 employees. Imagine how many computers there are at a company that has 50,000 employees. Not only did a lot of them have individual computers to work on, but there's a lot of servers, domain controllers, email servers, SharePoint systems, file servers, and more. In 2012, Saudi Aramco had over 40,000 computers in their network worldwide. Now I say 2012 because that was when the most profitable company in the world was hit with the most devastating cyber attack any company has ever seen. We are talking about critical data being erased and systems crippled, displaying an image of a burning American flag. This was no ordinary attack. Shamoon wasn't designed to spy or steal, it was built to destroy. But who was behind it? Was this a geopolitical power play, an act of cyber terrorism, or something even more sinister? To uncover the answers, let's rewind to that fateful August, deep in the heart of the Arabian desert, and explore one of the most devastating cyber attacks in history.
Shamoon included a routine called a wiper. This routine replaced crucial systems files with an image of a burning U.S. flag. More than 30,000 computers that it infected were rendered useless, and it virtually destroyed 30,000 computers.
The attack began quietly, hidden in the vast, sun-scorched Arabian desert. Deep within the computer systems of Saudi Aramco, a silent intruder moved unnoticed, spreading like wildfire. On August 15, 2012, this malicious code was triggered, unleashing a digital firestorm that would devastate Aramco's operations and shock the world. The name Shamoon is believed to have originated from a file path found within the malware's code during analysis. C:\Shamoon \Arabian Gulf \Viper \release \Viper point TBD. This directory, though arbitrary, became the defining label for the attack, synonymous with its destructive impact. Saudi Aramco's reliance on its industrial control systems ICS made it highly profitable, but its IT infrastructure was less protected. Unfortunately, the company's IT and ICS networks were interconnected, and at the time Aramco operated on a flat network. This lack of segmentation allowed the malware to spread rapidly once it entered the system. Phishing emails targeting employees likely planted the malware. Attackers used vulnerabilities in unpatched systems, infecting computers with malicious files. Once inside, the malware moved easily through the network, eventually reaching critical systems like domain controllers, which manage authentication and network access. The lack of security measures, such as unencrypted administrator passwords, provided attackers with unhindered access to the company's infrastructure. The malware wasn't just destructive, it was a calculated attack designed to cause maximum disruption. Within hours, tens of thousands of computers were rendered useless, data wiped clean, and critical operations crippled. To amplify its impact, the attackers replaced system files with an incendiary image of a burning American flag, sending a pointed and provocative message. This malicious software operated as a logic bomb, lying dormant in Aramco systems until its predetermined activation on August 15th. This deliberate timing exploited Saudi Aramco's vulnerability during Ramadan, when the company operated with minimal staffing. Over 35,000 computers were bricked, wiping production schedules, shipping manifests, and geological data. Even hardware was irreparably damaged. To understand the scope of the attack, we must examine how Shamoon infiltrated Saudi Aramco's systems. Let's have a closer look. In the case of Shamoon, it appears to have been initially dropped into an environment via a USB stick, and this USB stick seems to have been planted there by an insider in the organization. This caused the initial machine to get infected, and then once it was in the environment, once it initially infected that first system, that patient 0, it basically spread through the environment via network shares. What's particularly interesting about Shamoon is that it appears like the authors of Shamoon had already had access to and knew about domain credentials, and also had access to the domain controller itself, and that allowed them to cause the malware to spread more rapidly and more easily. And again, it was another sign that the threat itself was being perpetrated by insiders as opposed to by some external entity. Once the system was infected by Shamoon, the malware proceeded to execute its wipe functionality. This involved systematically deleting files from the system in a structured manner. For instance, Shamoon targeted specific directories such as the Documents and Settings folder, the Config folder, and user-specific directories. Additionally, it made efforts to delete traces of itself to make detection and analysis more difficult. Interestingly, Shamoon overwrote the deleted files with binary data that represented a JPEG image of a burning US flag. This strongly suggests that the malware had a political motivation rather than financial goals, as is common with ransomware or other financially driven attacks. After wiping the targeted files, Shamoon advanced to the next phase, deleting the master boot record, MBR. The MBR is critical for a system's functionality because it is the first sector on the hard drive responsible for defining how the drive is partitioned and for bootstrapping the operating system. Destroying or corrupting the MBR renders the system largely inoperable. To carry out the MBR wipe, Shamoon leveraged a commercial tool called Rawdisk, created by the company Eldos. While Rawdisk has legitimate uses, such as securely wiping systems, its use by Shamoon indicates the attackers opted for an existing commercial solution rather than developing their own. This suggests that the attackers may not have had the technical expertise to create such functionality themselves, further pointing to the likelihood of a hacktivist-driven attack rather than a sophisticated nation-state operation. After executing the wipe, Shamoon entered its final phase, reporting. In this phase, the malware sent the results of its operations back to a central server. Uniquely, the reporting server was located internally within the targeted organization's network. Typically, in botnet attacks, the command and control server is hosted externally, requiring infected machines to contact an external server. Shamoon's use of an internal server is unusual and further supports the theory that the attack was conducted by insiders. Hosting the server internally would make it more accessible to someone with insider knowledge, whereas an external attacker would have likely relied on external infrastructure. Let's see how the Shamoon works in practice in a lab environment. Firstly, notice the date on this machine. It's December of 2016, as seen in the bottom right corner of the screen. Everything appears normal at this point. Now the attacker introduces the initial payload, or dropper. This executable could have any name to disguise itself. In this example, we've called it ntssrv.exe. When this file is executed, it begins the process by creating a service on the system. You can see the service being registered in the system logs. At this point, the driver is active and the malicious process is set to execute further destructive actions. Before proceeding with its main function, the malware changes the system time. Observe the system clock in the bottom right corner of the screen. It moves from December 2016 to August 14, 2012, the day Shamoon hit. This is so that the logic bomb can be executed at the right time and date, or to bypass certain time-sensitive security mechanisms, or to disguise its activity. Now the wiper process moves to overwrite the master boot record, or MBR. This critical part of the system stores information necessary for booting the operating system. Once the overwrite is complete, the malware forces the system to reboot. As the system reboots, we see that it can no longer find the operating system. The machine is effectively bricked as the overwritten MBR prevents it from booting into the OS. The aftermath of the Shamoon attack was chaos. Saudi Aramco, accustomed to smooth and uninterrupted operations, faced severe disruption. While oil production itself wasn't halted, the logistical nightmare caused by the loss of critical data sent shockwaves through global markets. Shipping manifests, customer information, and other essential logistics were wiped out, leaving the company scrambling to maintain its supply chain. Shamoon's final stage of destruction targeted the master boot record MBR, the essential part of a hard drive responsible for starting the operating system. By corrupting the MBR, Shamoon rendered systems completely inoperable. To execute this, the attackers used a commercial tool called raw disk rather than a custom solution, indicating a lack of advanced technical expertise. In a drastic move to contain the damage, Saudi Aramco disconnected its network from the internet entirely. While this prevented further spread of the malware, it also cut off remote support from critical partners like Honeywell and Siemens, who helped maintain industrial systems. This unprecedented step underscored the scale of the crisis. Aramco quickly mobilized its immense resources to recover. Using its private fleet of aircraft, the company acquired hard drives directly from manufacturers worldwide, causing a spike in global hard drive prices for months. The sheer scale of the replacement effort was staggering, with over 35,000 computers needing to be restored or replaced. Despite the chaos, stories of resilience emerged. Engineers worked around the clock, piecing together fragmented systems and restoring operations. Employees grappled with the uncertainty of what the attack meant for their jobs and the company's future. Recovery efforts spanned more than 3 months, requiring an unlimited budget and an unwavering dedication from the workforce. Saudi Aramco's rapid response and extraordinary resources eventually stabilized operations, but the attack left a lasting impact, highlighting the vulnerability of even the largest and most powerful organizations. The Shamoon attack left the world grappling with a pivotal question: who orchestrated such a calculated and destructive assault? Suspicion quickly fell on Iran given the ongoing geopolitical tensions between Saudi Arabia and its rival. However, definitive attribution proved elusive, and the true culprits remain a subject of speculation. Cybersecurity experts who analyzed the malware uncovered several clues pointing to Iran. Servers linked to the attack were traced back to Iranian IP addresses, adding weight to the theory. The choice of the burning American flag as part of the malware's payload further suggested a political motive, likely tied to broader tensions in the region. Yet Iran vehemently denied involvement, and no concrete evidence directly implicated the nation's government. Some theorists proposed that the attack was retaliation for sanctions imposed on Iran, which had targeted its oil exports and crippled its economy. Another theory pointed to the infamous Stuxnet attack, which the United States and Israel allegedly launched against Iranian nuclear facilities. Could Shamoon have been a digital counterstrike against Saudi Arabia, a close US ally? The timing and scale of the attack lend credence to the idea that this was more than just a random act of cyber vandalism. The methodical approach of the attackers raised further questions. The use of insider access, combined with the setup of a command and control server within Aramco's network, demonstrated a level of knowledge and planning that hinted at either internal assistance or prolonged reconnaissance. How did the attackers obtain domain credentials? Were they aided by disgruntled employees, or did they breach the company's defenses long before the attack? Despite these sophisticated tactics, Shamoon lacked the technical refinement typically seen in state-sponsored malware like Stuxnet or Flame. Instead of sophisticated espionage capabilities, Shamoon relied on destructive actions and commercially available tools, such as raw disk, to execute its payload. This led some analysts to suggest that the attack may have been carried out by politically motivated hacktivist groups rather than a state-sponsored entity. While the true identity of the attackers remains unknown, the implications of the Shamoon attack are undeniable. It underscored the fragility of even the most robust organizations in the face of well-coordinated cyber operations. The attack blurred the lines between hacktivism, terrorism, and state-sponsored cyber warfare, raising alarming questions about the future of global cybersecurity. The Shamoon incident serves as a reminder of how quickly geopolitical tensions can spill over into the digital realm, with devastating consequences. Whether a retaliation, a show of force, or the work of rogue actors, Shamoon marked a turning point in the evolution of cyber conflict, highlighting the urgent need for nations and corporations alike to bolster their defenses against an increasingly hostile digital landscape. The Shamoon attack didn't just disrupt Saudi Aramco, it sent shockwaves across the globe. Oil prices spiked as markets reacted to the potential threat to supply chains. Businesses and governments alike began to recognize the vulnerabilities of interconnected systems. Critical infrastructures worldwide, from energy grids to financial institutions, re-evaluated their cybersecurity protocols. Similar attacks on other industries reinforced the global ripple effect of Shamoon. The incident served as a wake-up call, highlighting the urgent need for robust cybersecurity measures. If an attack of this scale could happen to Aramco, it could happen to anyone. The Shamoon attack was a turning point in cybersecurity, marking the moment when cyber warfare entered the mainstream consciousness. What made this attack so significant wasn't just its scale, it was its intent. Unlike many previous attacks that sought to steal data or cause financial harm, Shamoon aimed to destroy. Shamoon demonstrated that cyber attacks could cripple real-world systems, bridging the gap between the digital and physical worlds. It wasn't just about emails and databases. It was about supply chains, production schedules, and global markets. The lines between traditional warfare and cyber warfare began to blur. Since Shamoon, nation-states have increasingly turned to cyber attacks as a tool of geopolitical power. From the alleged Russian interference in elections to North Korean ransomware campaigns, cyber warfare has become a low-cost, high-impact way for countries to advance their agendas. Today, many nations are building dedicated cyber units within their militaries, investing billions in offensive and defensive capabilities. Shamoon exposed the vulnerabilities of critical infrastructure. Oil pipelines, power grids, water treatment plants, and even hospitals are now frequent targets for attackers. The Colonial Pipeline ransomware attack in 2021 echoed Shamoon's lessons, showing that a single breach could cause widespread disruption. The attack spurred a global shift in priorities. Governments enacted stricter regulations requiring organizations to meet minimum cybersecurity standards. Cyber insurance became a booming industry. At the same time, ethical hackers and cybersecurity experts stepped into the spotlight, helping companies anticipate and counter threats before they could materialize. As advanced as cybersecurity tools have become, the Shamoon attack highlighted the persistent role of human error. Social engineering tactics remain the most effective way to breach systems, making individual awareness and vigilance just as critical as firewalls and encryption. The battlefield of tomorrow is no longer physical, it is virtual. Shamoon was just the beginning. Today, as artificial intelligence and machine learning are woven into attack strategies, the stakes are higher than ever. Cyber warfare isn't confined to isolated incidents. It's an ongoing reality shaping economies, politics, and daily life. The question isn't whether another attack like Shamoon will happen, but when. Cyber threats are closer than you think. Could your business or personal data survive an attack like this? Don't leave it to chance. Hit that like, subscribe button and join us as we uncover more of the most shocking breaches. Stay informed, stay secure.